verse of them. Say, 1, 2, 3, come on. Hail Jesus, you're my King.
Hail Jesus, you're my King.
Your life frees me to sing.
Your life frees me to
Hey,
sing.
I praise you all my days.
I praise you all my days.
You're perfect in all your ways. Come on, say, oh, hail Jesus, you're my Lord.
Hail Jesus, you're my
Good God,
Lord.
and I will obey your word. Yeah.
I will obey your
Because I want to see your kingdom come.
Your kingdom come.
Not my will, but your be done.
Not my will,
Go
but
take
yours
it.
be done.
Say glory, glory to the Lamb.
Glory, glory to the Lamb.
You take us into the land.
You take us
Hey,
into the land.
we will conquer in your name.
In your name.
And proclaim that Jesus reigns.
Proclaim
Gonna
that
take it
Jesus
high, say hail, hail, Lion of Judah.
Hail, hail, Lion of Judah.
How wonderful you are.
How
Hey, come on,
wonderful
just
you
help me say hail, hail, Lion of Judah.
Hail, Lion of Judah.
How powerful you are.
How
Gonna take it high, say hail, Jesus, you're my King.
Hail, Jesus, you're my King.
Your life brings me to sing.
Your life
Take it up, say I will praise you all my days.
praise you all my
Be so perfect in all your ways.
Perfect.
Going up, say glory, glory to the Lamb.
Glory, glory to the Lamb.
You will take us into the land.
You will take us into
Whoa,
the land.
and we will conquer in your
We will conquer
name.
in your name.
And proclaim that Jesus reigns.
And proclaim
Gonna
that
take us
Jesus
high, say hail, hail, Lion of Judah.
Hail, hail, Lion of Judah.
How wonderful you are.
How wonderful
Let me
you
hear you say
are.
hail, hail, Lion of Judah.
Hail, Lion of Judah.
How powerful you are.
How
Break it down, break it down. Lion of Judah shall break every chain and give to us, oh my, the victory again and again. Whoa, the Lion, oh my, of Judah, yes, shall break every chain and give to us the victory again and again. Say, hail, hail, Lion of Judah.
Hail, hail, Lion of Judah.
How wonderful you are.
How wonderful
Come
you
on,
are.
say, hail, 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 Lion of Judah.
Hail, Lion of Judah.
How powerful you are.
How powerful you are.
How wonderful you are.
How
Hey,
wonderful
come
you
on.
are.
Say, how powerful you are.
How powerful you are.
How wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
Powerful you are.
How powerful you are.
Powerful
Hey.
you are.
Come on. Come on, everybody. Let's praise the Lord. He is the Alpha. He is the Omega, amen. The beginning and the end. He's our worthy Savior. Hallelujah. He's the Ancient of Days. Come on, everybody. Say, blessing,
Blessing and honor,
glory,
glory and power,
be unto you.
be to the Ancient of Days.
Hey, come on, y'all. From every nation, all
All of creation,
will bow.
bow for the Ancient of
Hey, come on, everybody say, every tongue in heaven and earth will declare your glory. Every knee shall worship. You
will be exalted, oh God.
and your kingdom.
And your
Kingdom shall not pass away. Hey, say, every tongue in heaven and earth will declare your glory.
every knee shall bow at your throne.
And worship.
And worship.
You
will be exalted, oh God.
and your kingdom.
And your
Kingdom shall not pass away. Oh, wait till the day.
original day.
Hey, come on, come on. Hey, Lord, we give you glory. We give you honor. Hey, we know you'll return soon and very soon. But until then, we'll rejoice in your name. We'll live for you, Lord. Come on. Your kingdom shall reign over all the earth. Say,
Sing to the ancient of days.
hey, none can compare to your matchless words. Oh,
Sing to the ancient
yeah.
of days.
Come on, we're gonna sing that again. Your kingdom shall reign over all the earth.
Sing to the ancient of
Hey,
days.
hey, hey, come on. For none can compare to your matchless words. Wow.
To the ancient of
Here we go, from the top, from the top. Every tongue in heaven and earth will declare your glory.
every knee shall bow at your throne.
And worship.
Worship.
You will be
Exalted, oh God.
and your kingdom.
And your
Kingdom shall not pass away. Oh, eternal day. Hallelujah. myself to you. Come on, y'all sing that with me. Say my life is not my own. To you I belong. Give myself to you. My life is not my own. To you I belong. Oh, give myself. Said I belong. My life is not my own. To you I belong. I give myself to you. Said I belong. Life is not my own. To you I belong. Give myself to you.
Well, good morning, Tri-Cities Church. So glad that you chose to join us once again for online. Do me a favor, if this is your first time joining us, just go into the comments, whether in your social media, on Facebook or on our YouTube channel. Make sure that you go in the comments if this is your first time so that we can give you our digital connection card so that you can connect with us, and maybe one day soon, hopefully in person, we'll be able to meet you here in our building in East Point. We are in the middle of a series called Elevators, What to Do When Life Pushes Your Buttons. And so I want to mix it up just a little bit because it's been quite a week for our nation, quite a week for a lot of things that are going on with protesting and riots, and really just a difficult time for us as a nation. And one of the things that has surfaced is the issue of hate. And so, yeah, let's go there. And let's be honest, many of us are watching the unveiling and the uncovering of a lot of things that perhaps may have been going on all around us, and we may not have been aware of just how difficult things have been over the last several years for us in this country. And so as we're talking about pushing buttons, let's go there. Let's talk about what do we do when someone is pushing the button of hate. Now, it could be anything. It could be a coworker. It could be someone in your family. When you're feeling this sense of strong distaste for you, or maybe just flat out hatred. I know we like to joke all the time that we have haters, and some of us do, but what do we really do when someone's pushing that button, when they're making it clear, maybe even making it overt, that there's some reason why they simply just don't care for you for whatever reason? I want to read a quote from Dr. King, one that many of us know. Dr. King said this. He says, "I have decided to stick with love because hate is too great a burden to bear." I'll read that again. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he once said, "I have decided to stick with love because hate is too great a burden to bear." I got to be honest with you, as most of us are weary this week, and most of us have vitriol reactions to some of the things that we've been saying. Let's be honest, let's go there. Most of us, our first response is something that we learned when we were younger, and that is that whenever someone gives us a certain type of energy, our most natural response is to give them the same type of energy back. Come on now, you know what I'm talking about. When you were growing up, remember on the playground when someone would say something to you and you would say something like this, "I'm rubber, you're glue, whatever you say bounces off me and sticks to you." That was sort of our way of saying, you know what, I'm not going to let you get me. I'm going to get you before you get me. You may be coming for me, but in order for me to defend and protect myself against you being a hater on me, I've got to return the same energy. So the question is, if Dr. King is saying that hate is too great of a burden to bear, what is it that makes us hate? What is it that makes us naturally want to return the same type of energy that someone is giving to us that may not necessarily be Christ-like? I found an interesting article on Psychology Today, so I'm not going to take credit for anything that I'm about to read with you. And yes, I'm flowing just a little bit differently this morning, but I want to read to you from this article sort of the psychology of hate and why we hate on one another. First thing they say is that the reason why we hate is because we have a fear of other. Come on now, most of us, we might not want to admit this, but we have a fear of anyone who is different, anything that looks different, any idea that's different. Here's what it says in the article. Behavioral researcher Patrick Waynes cites in his study in-group and out-group theory. He talks about that we feel threatened when we perceive outsiders, and we instinctively turn toward our in-group, our people that are like us. And he says that those with whom we identify are usually those we run to, watch this, as a survival mechanism. Waynes goes on to explain that hatred is driven by two key emotions, love and aggression. One, love for the in-group and the group that is favored, and two, aggression for the out-group, the group that has been deemed as being different, sometimes being deemed as dangerous or a threat to the in-group. Here's the second reason why they say that we have a trouble with hate, is that we have a fear of ourselves. According to Washington, D.C. clinical psychologist Dana Herron, the things that people hate about themselves are often the things that they fear about themselves. And what ends up happening is that we fear parts of ourselves that perhaps we haven't even dealt with. This phenomenon in psychology is called projection. It's a term coined by Freud. You know Freud, the famous psychologist, and he describes it as our tendency to reject what we don't like about ourselves by projecting it onto others. In other words, we all have an innate need to feel good and to look good and fundamentally to be good people. But the things that we wrestle with ourselves internally that nobody else knows about, we tend to project those on others as a way of trying to make ourselves feel better about ourselves. Number three, the reason why we hate is because we have a lack of self-compassion. Here's what they say, that if we are okay with ourselves, we see others' behaviors as about them and can respond with compassion. But if I keep hate in my heart for myself, if I have a lack of compassion for myself, then oftentimes I will learn to hold others to a standard that I myself have not given myself grace and compassion for. Come on now, you know this, that when you're struggling with doing something or accomplishing something, usually you feel some kind of way about seeing somebody else accomplish or overcome something that you haven't necessarily been able to accomplish or overcome. And what ends up happening is, because I have not given myself grace and compassion, I find it difficult to give grace and compassion and love to others who I may be projecting my lack of self-compassion on. Here it is, number four. The reason why we hate one another is because oftentimes it fills a void in our lives. Here's what this article says. It says that acts of hate are attempts to distract oneself from feelings such as helplessness, powerlessness, injustice, inadequacy, and, check this out, shame. And oftentimes hate is grounded in some sense of perceived threat. It is an attitude that can give rise to hostility and aggression towards individuals or groups. Like much of anger, it is a reaction to and a distraction from some form, watch this, of inner pain. The individual consumed by hate may believe that the only way to regain some sense of power over his or her pain is to preemptively strike out at others. In this context, they say, each moment of hate is a temporary reprieve from inner suffering. And then here it is, number 5 in the article, that hate oftentimes is a result of societal and cultural factors. Listen to what they say. We live in a war culture that promotes violence in which competition is a way of life. And we fear connecting because it requires us to reveal something about ourselves. We reveal something about ourselves means that we have to be vulnerable about who we really are. And so because we don't want to do that, we're taught to hate anyone who is deemed to be the enemy, meaning anyone different from us, which leaves little room for vulnerability and an exploration of hate through empathetic discourse and understanding. In our current society, one is more ready to fight. Listen to this. This is what it says in the article. In our current society, one is more ready to fight than to resolve conflict. Peace, check this out, is seldom the option. And so there's so many different reasons why we hate. Don't get it twisted. This message is not about the other person. This message is not about everyone else. This message is not about nudge the person next to you. This message is not about those people that you don't get along with on social media. This message is not about everyone else. This message is about looking internally and discovering some of the reasons why we have and harbor hate in our own hearts. Jesus had something to say about this, and I think it'll shock you about his response about what to do when it seems like people are pushing the hate button. As always in this series, the first thing I'm going to challenge you to do is to look into your own self. Like King David says, search me, O God, and see if you find any offense in me first, and then renew in me a right spirit and help me to return to the joy of your salvation. So before I even get into how to respond to when you're being hated on, the first thing I'm going to tell you to do, you already know it, it is to do some introspection and investigation in your own heart. And then Jesus says something that's going to blow your mind, something that, if I'm going to be honest with you, I struggle with quite a bit because I'm not certain that I've totally figured out how to do this yet. But Jesus says something in Luke chapter 6. I'm going to read verses 27 through 33. He says, to you who are ready for the truth, I'm reading from the Message translation this morning. To you who are ready for the truth, I say this: love your enemies. Let them bring out the best in you, not the worst. When someone gives you a hard time, respond with energies of prayer for that person. In other words, Jesus says, don't return the same energy that they're giving you. If you're going to put your energy into anything, return it with energy of prayer. If someone slaps you on the face, stand there and take it. If someone grabs your shirt, gift wrap your best coat and make a present of it. If someone takes unfair advantage of you, use the occasion to practice the servant life. Jesus says this: no more tit-for-tat stuff, no more back and forth, no more I'm rubber and you're glue and whatever you say bounces off to me and sticks to you. He says no more tit-for-tat. Live generously. Here's a simple rule of thumb for behavior, Jesus says. Ask yourself what you want people to do for you, then grab the initiative and do it for them. If you only love, check this out, this is the part that blows my mind. If you only love the lovable, watch what Jesus says. Do you expect a pat on the back? Run-of-the-mill sinners do that. If you only help those who help you, do you expect a medal? Garden variety sinners do that. In other words, Jesus says that this whole love thing is not about distributing love to those who love you. He says anybody can do that. As a matter of fact, people who don't even believe in me have the capability and the propensity to love people who love them back. Jesus says that doesn't impress me. If you only love people who love you, if you only respond to people who hate you by returning the same energy, he says that doesn't impress me. If you only love people who love you back, that doesn't impress me. Don't expect a trophy. Don't expect a pat on the back. Even sinners love those who love them. Jesus says that if you're going to learn how to respond to those who push the hate button, there's just a couple of things I want to give you. And then, as always, go over to our Facebook page, jump on so that we can discuss this even in the midst of this conflict. Let's have a real dialogue about this. Let's have a real discussion. Jesus says, here's what I'm asking you to do as Christians. Even when you experience hate, love. Listen to what he says. Here's a couple of things of how you respond when someone's pushing the hate button. Number one, he says, love your enemies. I love that all throughout the biblical text, God commands us to love. You remember when Jesus was asked, what's the greatest of all the commandments? And he says, everything that we taught you, everything in the Old Testament, all of the law and everything that the prophets taught boils down to this. Love God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, and your strength, and love your neighbors as yourself. God is very clear. He even says in the New Testament that if you say that you love God whom you've not seen, but cannot love your brother and sister who you have seen, then the text says that you are a liar and you don't follow God. And God over and over and over and over commands us to love, which suggests, watch this, that love is not a feeling. Because God can't command you to feel anything, but what God can command you to do is to live a life of faith. So let me say this, that love isn't an emotion. It's not a feeling. For God, love is an act of faith. So God doesn't command us to feel love for one another. He commands us to show love for one another, because it's not something that he's waiting and asking for us to feel. He wants us to operate in faith. So let me ask this question. When it comes to loving people who sometimes can seem unlovable or don't love you, what if your assignment is not to be happy, but to be holy? What if even in the midst of everything that's going on, our assignment as believers, as Christians, as those who follow Christ, is not to be happy about what everyone says or what everything that's going on, but our assignment is to be holy? Number one, Jesus says, if you're going to respond to the hate button being pushed, love your enemy. Number two, he says, pray for them. Oftentimes, I said this in the article, that hate is a matter of projected pain. Sometimes the reason why people are being hateful towards you, the reason why you have haters, the reason why people are pushing that button is because somewhere deep inside there's a pain that is unresolved. Here's a question I have. What type of pain do you have to have in your heart and in your life that causes you to only feel good about yourself when you make other people feel bad? That's some kind of pain. That is some kind of trauma. That is some kind of hurt. And maybe Jesus is asking us to pray for our enemies because he wants us, watch this, to be sensitive to the fact that there may be some unresolved trauma in their life to where they are unable to feel good about themselves without making someone else feel bad about themselves. Man, that's some kind of pain. And if Jesus is correct, and I believe that he is, I believe everything that Jesus says is true. If Jesus is correct, then man, you got to admit that that kind of pain requires somebody to be praying for them. Even if they don't show you any love, Jesus says, pray for them. That's a deep wound that many people carry, that maybe if we took the call to prayer a little bit more serious, it might actually move on the hearts of people who've been showing hate. Okay, number three, here's what Jesus says when the hate button is being pushed, when you're being hated on, when people tend to overtly or even undercover hate on you or have something negative to say about you or seem to be displeased with you. Here's the third thing that Jesus says: be a servant. Be a servant. Because service, check this out, keeps you humble. That's why all throughout the text you even see Jesus serving. He says that the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve one another. That's why you see Jesus bending down and washing the feet of his disciples, because he's modeling for us the need to serve, because service keeps us humble. Why is that important, Pastor? Because humility, watch this, drives away hate. If you want to make sure that you don't return the same energy of hate when someone's giving you hate, continue to serve. Because you cannot, watch this, have humility and hatred residing in the same heart. So Jesus says, be a servant. Number four, if you want to know how to respond, be generous. Make sacrifices. All throughout the Old Testament, we see this principle where they make sacrifice for sins. And it's not just a sacrifice for saying, God, I'm sorry for what is done wrong. But sacrifice, watch this, has been designed to pay for sin, but also to simultaneously restore relationship. I've often told people that if you are making sacrifices in your life that are tearing you away from your family and keeping you away from your children, then that's not a sacrifice, that's selfishness. Real sacrifice, as we see in the biblical text, even as we see Jesus sacrificing his life, always restores relationship. Why is that important? Because if I'm going to respond to when I'm being hated on, if I'm going to respond to the hatred that we see in the world, I've got to be generous. That's why Jesus says, if someone takes your shirt, give them your coat too. Be generous. Go over and above, because when you make the sacrifice, you are saying to God that I am, to the best of my ability, attempting to restore relationship. Here's why that's important, because when you make sacrifices, when you build an altar, so to speak, a proverbial altar on your heart, and you're generous and you make sacrifices, watch this, you cannot, listen to me, have a large altar and a large ego at the same time. Yeah, when I'm generous, when I serve, when I make sacrifices, even in the face of hatred, what it does is it allows me to build a large enough altar on my heart to drive out the large ego that I also have in my heart. And so Jesus says, if you want to push back against hatred, be generous, make sacrifices, go over and above, and continue to be generous so that you can build an altar that pushes out your own ego. Here it is, last thing. If you're going to respond to hate, be a Christian. This is probably one of the toughest things to do. Notice that Jesus says that people who don't even believe in me love people who love them. He says the run-of-the-mill sinners do that. That's par for the course for people who don't even believe, but people who follow me, people who claim to be a Christian, people who claim to be Christ followers, go over and above, and their response to hate is never hate. Their response to hate is to continue to love people despite how they treat you. That's tough, my brothers and sisters. And I know it, but what Jesus is essentially saying is, if you're going to respond to hate, you can be angry. He says you can be frustrated. You can even, at times, be a little bit fearful about how the world is going and what's going to happen. But one thing that you should be at all times, no matter the hatred that you face, listen to me, lean in, be a Christian. Online, in your dialogue, in your discussion, in what you post, in the discussions you choose not to have, and how you choose to respond to things that you disagree with, and even in your assumptions about who's not saying what and who's not speaking up. Be wise. Be angry. You can be frustrated. But what you always have to be, no matter what, is be a Christian. Jesus says that those who follow me, they don't return the same energy that's given to them. That's why Dr. King said, I've decided to stick with love, because this thing called hate is too big of a burden to carry. And so I want to encourage you, no matter what it looks like in this world, no matter what you're facing, no matter what the times look like, be the people of God. Be a Christian. Love those who don't love you. Love those who may even be hating on you, because that's what's going to be the thing that actually changes the world. So listen, this is a time in our service where we do two things. If you're just joining us for the first time, this is a time where we take communion. We take it to remind us of the love that God has given to us. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that his demonstration of love was to give. And so we take communion so that we can celebrate that we've been given a great love that we've also been commanded to give to others. The Bible says that while we were yet sinners, while we were doing our dirt, while we were blatantly and overtly being disobedient and disrespectful to God, he still sent his Son to die for us. And so gather your family around and gather your elements so that you can prepare to take communion. And then the second thing that we do during this time of our service is we give. Look, I understand things are tight. I understand that the economy is not what it used to be. But I want to encourage you that Jesus says that a part of overturning hate is to live generously. Why? Not so much because it blesses others, but because it makes sure that you have room in your heart for God to continue to work so that you don't absorb the hatred of others. So I'm going to encourage you during this time to take communion. There'll be a short video for communion. Then right after that, don't click off. There'll be some announcements that you need to hear. And then after all the announcements are over, make sure you go over to the Tri-Cities Church Facebook page, where I'll be live answering your questions about this message or any message in the Elevator series. So go ahead and grab your communion. Go ahead and get your family prepared. And then after I pray, there'll be a video for communion. God, we thank you for your love. We thank you for your grace. We thank you for giving us your son, Jesus, who loved us unconditionally. Now help each one of us to return that same kind of love so that we can demonstrate what was given to us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Hey, City Kids and Ministry Partners. It is Miss Jamie, and I am in the church building, which makes me smile, but also makes me feel kind of sad because it is very quiet here and it is empty of all of you. I have missed you all so much, and this was not the way I thought my last bit of time leading you guys would be ending. But if there's anything that I learned through having 9 kids instead of the 4 that I thought we'd have, and homeschooling instead of sending them to school, and all the other journeys God has sent my family on, it is that God knows what he is doing when he asks us to do things that we're not sure about. And so several months ago, I shared with the church my decision to step down as the City Kids pastor due to the calling to return my focus back to my family. Many of you know that I homeschool our 9 kids, and that Addison just graduated, and next year Jillian's graduating, and the year after that Anna's graduating. I get a breather the next year, and then Coleman's graduating, and Andrew and Joseph, and on down the line. So as I'm starting this new season of parenting, of sending adults out into the world, it is requiring something different from me than what I've had to give in the last few years. So because of that, there are needs here that have been difficult for me to address while also addressing the needs at home. And I tried arguing with God at first, and tried bargaining with God at first, and tried wrestling with God at first, but ultimately was led to the idea that my season here as kids pastor is over. And I am very excited to be turning my attention back to my family completely. I didn't ignore them for 4 years, but to have more to give to them. And I'm sad to be turning it away from here. However, the people that God placed on my heart to serve in my place right now bring me so much comfort that it makes it a lot easier to not be sad. And so I'm excited to share with you that Marissa and Richard Chambers will be coming on as interim City Kids pastors. And I am really excited about this because they both love City Kids so much. They're Isaiah and Isabella Chambers' mom and dad. They have served in this ministry for the entire time that I've been leading it. And they love kids and they love teaching others about Jesus. And Richard has all this crazy historical knowledge that he adds to the mix. And Marissa has all this administrative gifting and love and passion for children and understanding of diverse communities as a former educator at Hateville Elementary. There is just so much goodness packaged in that power couple that's going to be coming in and leading this ministry. And I am so excited about it. Our ministry is going to look different moving forward, and it was going to with new leadership, but it's also going to because of the coronavirus and COVID-19. And so there's still a lot of things that are uncertain for us, but know that our leadership team has been meeting and working via Zoom calls and setting forth a plan that is safest for our ministry, and that is mindful of all the things going on around us. So when you come back, it's going to be different, but it's not going to be different because I'm not in charge anymore necessarily. It's not going to be different because of the virus alone. It's just going to be different. Different times and different seasons produce different results, and different is not bad. Different is not bad. And that's one of the struggles we have in our world that makes relating to one another hard to do, is we see something different or someone different and we don't know what to do with it. And we're like, oh no, I don't want to do that. It's different. I just want to encourage you guys as ministry partners and as City Kids participants, embrace the different. Even if it feels uncertain, even if it feels a little bit scary, lean on God. Know that He has you. He has you in the palm of His hand. Know that He has this ministry in the palm of His hand. He loves this ministry more than I do. He loves this church more than I do. And He loves all of you more than I do. And so I just encourage you to pray for this ministry as we transition. I encourage you to pray for our church as we return to some new sense of normal. And I just want you to know we're not going anywhere. We're here. I'll still be wearing this orange shirt and serving in a classroom somewhere. Mr. Adam is going to continue to serve. Our kids are going to continue to serve and participate. We are so excited about the future of Tri-Cities Church. I love you. I thank you for the chance to serve you guys. You ministry partners have made this a dream. You kids have made this a dream. You parents have made this a dream. And I've learned so much from you. I have grown so much serving you. And I'm so grateful to be of service to this church and this ministry for this season that I was. So I thank you and I love you, and I'll see you soon. Bye.
Tri-Cities family, thank you once more for joining us for a service together. I could not be more just honored to be part of this community right now in the middle of everything that we're going through as a nation. And there's so many ways that we can come together as a strong community. I love what Lamar had to say last week in a special message. If you haven't watched yet, I really encourage you to. But I love what he had to say, that us as a church community, as a diverse church community, is our own form of protest in the middle of what we are going through as a nation. So guys, I want to just share some opportunities for us to come together. Starts on Wednesday mornings at 8 a.m. We're having Zoom prayer meetings where we can just come around the table, share how we're doing, and pray for each other, lift each other up. So take advantage of that. Next, we actually have an opportunity to be together physically. So we're talking about reopening our church doors, and I, for one, am thrilled that we are moving into phase 1 of reopening the doors. So how this is going to work is Sunday evenings at 5 p.m. when we film our service, we are going to invite the first 30 people that want to join us in the building together to sign up and be part of that. So in your email, there's a link to that form, and you'll see some information on the screen about that as well. But there's 3 weeks that we're going to do this. So those 3 weeks are June 28th, July 5th, and July 12th. So that is phase 1. Hope to see you guys there. Next, for the women, opportunity to meet together and strengthen the community through Paint and Sip. So that is happening June 27th at 4 p.m. More information to come on that. Reach out to Virginia Fortunato for any questions. They're also meeting on Wednesday evenings at 6 p.m. And again, our men are meeting on Monday nights at 8 p.m. So don't miss those opportunities to connect as a community. Last but not least, our food program still going strong. So you know this drill now, as we've been talking about it for several weeks. Monday to Wednesday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. You can call in, reserve a spot, come pick up some meals for your family on Sunday. So take advantage of that as we navigate this pandemic together. Last but not least, next week we'll be finishing up our series of elevators together. So you don't want to miss that exciting conclusion. Guys, have a wonderful week, and thank you so much for joining us.